Usui's Reiki Precepts. So let's have a look at this next slide, and we should hopefully see what those precepts are. So they start off with the thought, just for today. Do not be angry. Do not worry. Be filled with gratitude. Devote yourself to your work and be kind to people and yourself. Okay, again, going back to what we've said before about translating from Japanese, there are so many different translations of this. Every time you come across them on the internet or different teachers, you get a slightly different slant, but they've all pretty much got the same kind of theme running through them. Okay, so we've got this first two, which as I see them are prohibitions. It's like, do not be angry and do not worry. And we can go into a lot more detail about, we will go into a lot more detail about that as well, because we can never stop ourselves being angry. Yeah. And I think it's much more about honouring the emotion, observing it, allowing it to pass, maybe recognising where it's coming from, what's triggered it, and starting to learn to deal with those triggers in a different kind of way. Yeah. But in terms of the way that the precepts work, it's kind of an awareness thing. It's starting to help you to become aware of what sort of triggers these things. What is it that triggers your anger? What is it that triggers worries and that kind of stuff? For me, I'm a natural born worrier. So too was my mum. And I definitely inherited that trait from her. Maybe it was upbringing, maybe it was a genetic thing, I don't know. But it's like, especially earlier on in my adult life, I would worry about everything. I used to do martial arts. One of my gradings for my martial arts, and the teacher then said, I'm the kind of guy that would worry about whether or not the rain was wet. I'd have to go outside to check to see if it was still wet. In some ways that was quite cutting, actually, but it was very true. He nailed that sort of personality aspect. For me, that's going back about 10 years ago. That was more than that probably now. But it was very true about who I was as an individual. And the precepts can really help with that. In the manual, it gives a couple of definitions of what precepts are. I'm just turning very quickly. You don't have to do this, but the most important thing is to know that they're in the manual. So a couple of dictionary definitions about what a precept actually means. So one is the Oxford Dictionary, which talks about a precept being a general rule intended to regulate behaviour or thought. Second definition from Collins English Dictionary, a precept is a general rule that helps you to decide how you should behave in particular circumstances. Okay, so you look at these and you think, okay, do not be angry, right? Do I not be angry for the rest of my life? Bit of a tall order, really. But as we were discussing before, it's getting the consciousness there of what's triggering the anger. Yeah. What's making and so the idea with the precepts is that you say these multiple times. Okay. Ideally, you say them 3 times a day. You find time to make it part of your routine. Perhaps it's much more achievable if it's just 2 times, so you could do it when you wake up, when you go to bed. And by saying these on a regular basis, they then start to become second nature. Right, so it's not a case of just saying these off by pat without thinking about what we're saying. We've got to say them with meaning. We've got to say them with sort of a thought as to what we're actually expressing, yeah? And as we do that, what we'll do is during the day, something will happen, we become angry and we think, oh, right, what's triggered that? Why have we done that? How have I reacted like that? And then over time, we start to learn and we start to react to life's events differently, yeah? And this is so incredibly powerful. It's incredibly beneficial, is this. And so, again, using another analogy, going back to the idea of doing martial arts. So I first started doing martial arts as a kid, and I think probably by the time I was about 18, 19, something like that, I'd really started to realise that when you're doing practices, you're doing like what you might call drills. So it might be something like a punch and then a counter to block an opponent. And you do that hundreds and thousands of times. And after a while, it starts to become built in as part of your subconscious. And I found this, somebody then attacked me at one point, punched me, and I didn't have to think about what I was doing. I'd blocked and I'd countered without even thinking about it. I held my punch. I didn't actually hit the person, but it was enough to, I'd not had to think about it. I'd not had to plan it. It just happened. And that's exactly the way that the precepts work, that we just do these things automatically after we've said the precepts so many times, and we start to become observant about what we're doing in life. Then we start to then change the way we think about things and the way that we react to things. And then whilst, it's impossible for us never to be angry again, but we can start to change the things that do trigger that anger. We can start to minimize the impact of it on our lives. For me as an individual, anger, I was like Mr. Angry. I could make, like road rage was a really good example. Something could happen and it could be there for days or weeks. I'd still be in the back of my mind, if I see this guy again, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z, I'll do this, I'll do that. And I mean, what's that serving? It's serving absolutely nothing. And just anger and hatred and fear and things like that, they just eat us up from inside. Yeah, and for me, that's been one of the biggest things Reiki has helped me with, is to be able to sort of dissolve and help to mitigate that, to change that. So I react in a completely different way now. And the ideal situation, if something does trigger you, you need to minimize that so that it's an acceptance. We're back to the idea of surrender again. Somebody's cut you up in a car or whatever. What good is it me swearing, shouting, and being angry for days? None whatsoever. No. As soon as I can come to terms with that and just let it pass, then the better it is for everybody concerned, Because again, as we become embroiled in these emotions, we radiate them. You'll learn more and more about this with the energy. You'll experience it. If you're in a really good frame of mind, if you're in a really good mood, and you're channeling the energy, that energy radiates out from you. Back to the idea of the light bulb and the light coming out of the light bulb, it spreads. It really does. So if we're in a state of negativity, in a state of anger and fear or whatever, then we're emitting that energy, and we don't want to be doing, So anyway, going back to the precepts. So Usui said, just for today. And this, then you could use the analogy of a diet. We might get partway through the day and we trip up, we become angry, we worry about something or whatever. We don't give up. We get back on the bandwagon. We keep on trying. So just for today, it makes it like a bite-sized thing, which this is one of the powerful things that I learned from my first Reiki master. And she said this, just for today, it makes it achievable.
Yeah, it does.
Instead of thinking like, if he hadn't put that at the top of the thing and said, do not be angry, you failed before you've even started.
Yeah.
But the idea of it, this is just for today. Yeah. Right. So we've talked a lot about those two prohibitions, the anger and the worry about things. And again, look, just thinking a bit more about worry. What does it serve? If we can do something about a situation, then we do it. Yeah. If we know that something's going to happen, it's going to cause a problem, then we do whatever we do or can do to rectify it, stop it happening, etc. That's positive use of that energy. But if we can't, and we're not even sure that something's going to happen, then what is the point of spending time worrying about it? And again, it's this kind of awareness by saying the precepts on a daily basis that we start to become more conscious of the way in which our mind is working, and we can start to think, oh, right, okay, that triggered me. Right, okay, well, it's pointless worrying about that. Let's move on. It takes mental effort to do that, but using the precepts can be the trigger to make the awareness that we need to make the changes. Otherwise, why would we change?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So those first two are the prohibitions. The next three are much more positive from a vibrational perspective. The first one there is about being filled with gratitude. Okay. And again, for my students, I always say, make a game out of this. we think about like lockdown, for example. People get so distressed about the situation, but in comparison to where we could be and where, you know, what life could be like, we've still got a very, very nice lifestyle. You know, and it's things like we go into a room, you flick a switch, lights come on. You know, how grateful should we be that we can use that kind of thing readily? But we take it for granted. We don't even think about it, do we? We just flick a switch, it's there. You know, hot and cold running water, hot and cold clean running water. You know, we've got a flushing toilet system. You know, how much problem would that cause us if we didn't have those things? You know, it doesn't bear thinking about, does it? But there are opportunities for gratitude. Yeah. And as we look at everything in life, as we go through it, you'd be surprised how much, and you get to the point, if you do make a game of this, that silly things in life you can be grateful for. Yeah. And then you start to look in wonderment at everything that's around you, you know. So again, it's a wonderful transformation. So that gratitude, yeah, and then devoting yourself to your work, you can apply that to what you do in your day-to-day life. But really, what Usui was meaning there, in the depth of it, was your own spiritual development work, and so that's what he was talking about, being devoted to. But again, as I say, you can devote yourself. Again, if you have to work, you've got to do it. So you might as well try to enjoy it while you're doing it. But if you're going to devote yourself to anything, it's like you apply yourself more to your own personal spiritual development than you would do anything else in life. Because as you grow as an individual, so too can you help other people. So it's again, win-win kind of situation. So again, beautiful sort of thing to be considering on a daily basis. And then the last one, be kind to people and yourself. When I first learned this, the translation that I got was, it was basically be compassionate to yourself as well as other people. Now, from a vibrational perspective, love and compassion, which are almost interchangeable, are about as high as you can get vibrationally. Yeah. And so if we start to incorporate these things in our lives on a regular basis, then this lifts us as individuals vibrationally. And this is one of the things that really, from a law of attraction, is really good. So if you start to analyze what Usui has said here with his precepts, the first two, the anger and the worry, and you could lump into that fear as well, are right at the bottom of the pile. The only thing that's below anger and fear and worry is despondency and hopelessness. And then below that is death. Yeah. So from a vibrational perspective, this is why he said to us, do not do these things. He's basically saying, move away from those things. They're not good for you. They're not beneficial for you. Instead, focus on these things. So looking at the gratitude, the love, the compassion, devoting yourself to your spiritual development, this is, from a law of attraction perspective, it's brilliant. It's a masterclass in law of attraction without even telling you that that's what you're doing. Yeah, law of attraction obviously wasn't known as law of attraction back then, but what he was essentially inculcating within people was this steady progress or program of being able to change the way that your mind works to becoming much more vibrationally higher vibrationally focused. Yeah. So again, precepts, very, very worthwhile. Some Reiki masters will say that this, along with the meditation, should only be done for the first 21 days after you've learned Reiki. I would say that's nonsense. Make it part of your life. So, and you can couple them with the meditation. So one of the meditations I'll recommend for first thing in the morning, one of the meditations I'll recommend for late thing at night. And so after you've done your meditation, you can then say the precepts, or maybe before, and so that it becomes a little bit of a ritual for you. And then it becomes part of your routine, and again becomes something that you don't have to think about. It's just something that you do. Well, on the back cover, it talks about the secret art of inviting happiness, the miraculous medicine of all diseases. And this was Usui's description for Reiki. Okay. He then went on to say the precepts. So I'll read these out. Just for today, do not be angry. Just for today, do not worry. Just for today, be filled with gratitude. Just for today, devote yourself to your work. And just for today, be kind to people and yourself. Okay, and then he goes on then and says, every morning and every evening, join your hands in prayer. Say these words in your heart and chant these words with your mouth. That's the Usui Reiki treatment for the improvement of body and mind. Now, that last bit there where he says about joining your hands together in prayer, and he's saying the words in your heart and with your mouth. Two things there. First of all, again, through spiritual studies, prayer should always be directed to the heart. Okay? Regardless of who you're praying to. There's a bigger backstory to this. So the backstory to this is I went to see a guy called Greg Braden. I don't know if you've come across Greg Braden or not. No look of recognition there. He works in a circuit with a couple of other guys, typically with Joe Dispenza and I always manage to forget one of the names. So Dr. Joe Dispenza, Greg Braden, and Bruce Lipton. And they're all three coming from a similar kind of perspective where they're marrying up modern science with spirituality. And the Greg Braden thing that I went to was like a 2-day seminar. And he spent a lot of time talking about scientific information around the heart, and that they've discovered that the heart also contains neurons in the same way that the brain is made up of neurons. The heart's not made up of neurons, but it has neurons in it. And so we can connect the mind and heart together, and that the evidence suggests that the heart creates this magnetic field that stretches out far more than the energy produced by the brain, and it goes out into what we might think of as the ether, into spirit, and it's through the heart that we can initiate conversation with spirit. So if we're ever praying, then the idea of making the prayer heartfelt,
right,
that's what it's meaning. It's almost like you're talking to your heart. It's getting that real connection with the heart. One of the things, like when we did the last experience, one of the first things I asked you to do was breathing in and out of your heart. That's starting to initiate that connection, yeah? And so it starts to open us up spiritually. It opens us up to spirit, opens us up to inspiration from spirit. And like I say, if you are praying, whether it's to your guides, to your guardian angel, to source or God, whatever you want to call it, then through the heart, always through the heart, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what you're saying, that say these words in your heart or to your heart and chant these words with your mouth. So again, if we get the chance, saying them out loud always carries a higher vibration than it does if we say something in our mind.
Right.
It might not always be possible if, for instance, you're doing your nighttime meditation in bed and you're sat in your hobby, then you obviously wouldn't to say that in your head, not out loud.
Yeah.
I think we've sort of covered that very nicely, I think. So yeah, the Reiki precepts, very, very simple but incredibly powerful.